All right, guys. So we're going to jump into Photoshop. We're going to look at two-point perspective. This is going to be a lot of fun. Please follow along. Let me just share my screen. All right. All right, guys. So we're gonna be creating a document, a new document. We'll go for a print. We'll go for 8.5 by 11. We'll make it landscape. Okay, we can go ahead and create that. Okay. So I'm just gonna turn off my camera here. All right, guys, and Daniel, I'm seeing your note there, and I only because you we haven't seen the alternative like doing it fully in Google Meets, and then you waiting an hour or half an hour after class for me to upload my video. If you have like a question or if you miss something, you're gonna have to wait for that to kind of be there. If I use YouTube, you can kind of rewind immediately. The quality is better, like drastically better than Google Meet. Zoom would also potentially be another alternative. I do not have I don't have a subscription to Zoom, so but yeah. So just based on the feedback that I've gotten from my last year students, who we did both, we did Google Meet and we did YouTube, there was absolutely zero kind of like complaint with the switch. There was like they were happy with that. No complaints at all. Lots of complaints with Google Meet though. Lots and lots of complaints. Screen's too fuzzy. The max resolution is not good enough. They just couldn't make out what was going on my screen. So yeah, so for that reason, that's why we're kind of doing YouTube. So I recognize it feels like an extra step. It is inconvenient. I agree with that, but it's absolutely, I think, worth the extra effort. All right, so we're here in Photoshop, and we're going to be looking at two-point perspective. So let's just make a text title here. That font is way too big. Let's get a better. Question, Ariana. Yes, the delay is it's a bit of a pain. It is a pain.
Yeah, what size did you use for the document there?
It's 3300 pixels
Yeah.
by 2550 pixels. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's just it feels like a good amount of space for me to work. All right. So we have two-point perspective. So anytime we're doing perspective, what's the absolute first thing we put down? A horizon line. I'm not seeing any YouTube chat. Is anyone chatting on YouTube, or I'm not seeing anything on the YouTube chat for some reason. I'll keep my Google Meet here open and try to monitor both. Okay, for some reason I'm not seeing any of it. Let me try refreshing. There we go. I see it now. Okay, so 2-point perspective. The first thing we put down is what? A horizon line. Thank you. Jaden, you're the first one I saw. I'm sure someone else probably also answered, but so we want a horizon line, okay? And so we want a few things in our Photoshop documents to start. We want guides, right? So Control R to toggle open and close rulers. Okay, Control R. Here. And we can drag, if you remember, from one of these out, and we can drag in our guidelines. Guidelines are really nice because they allow us to snap our geometry, or snap our lines and our drawings to these guides. Okay. So first thing we start with is our horizon line. And when we draw our lines, we're going to use these line segments. We can do pixel mode. Okay, so we select our line tool over here. We can change the size with our square brackets. So left and right square brackets will make my brush bigger and smaller, or the thickness of that line bigger and smaller. Okay, you can see the size change here. Okay, but when we're doing perspective, we generally want to work in a very thin line. Another thing we want to do, we can have our background layer, that's fine. Generally speaking, we don't want to draw on our background layer. I want to draw on a floating layer on top of it, because linear perspective requires a lot of construction lines. And because of that, I want to be able to turn those construction lines off at some point, or reduce the opacity or something. Okay. So how we have our 2-point perspective scene. We looked at 1-point perspective last week. Okay, so 1-point perspective, we basically, I'll just use a guide for this. So this will be my horizon line. I'll grab another guide here. This will be my vanishing point. So that intersection will be the vanishing point on my horizon line. And remember, when we think of perspective, we want to think of north, east, south, and west. We want to think of like those directions. So I want to think of a compass. Let's go a little thicker so you can see this. I think my opacity is messed up. Yes, it is. There we go. And by the way, while you're drawing out a line, guys, you can hold down the space bar, right? And it will reposition that line. I know we talked about this, but it's kind of worth reiterating. And then if I let go of space bar, then I can continue drawing out, and it'll stay anchored wherever I left it. So space bar allows me to shift it, and then I can kind of drop it where I want. If I want to constrain the angle, I can hold down the shift key. Okay, and you'll see it snaps to that horizontal axis. It basically snaps in 45-degree increments. Okay, while I'm holding down the shift key. Okay, so shift and spacebar allow us to really get kind of precise with our lines. Okay. All right, so let's go smaller with this. Okay, so we want to really think of these directions. So we have north, east, south, and west. Okay. And so when we think of 1-point perspective, when we think of 1-point perspective, we're basically looking in one direction. Sorry, just let me get my, I have things spread across 2 windows here. Hold on. Okay, so when we're thinking of 1-point perspective, we're basically just looking straight north, you know? And you can imagine a building being here, right? We're looking at that front of that building, or if we're inside of a space, we're looking at straight at one wall, you know, and all the kind of boxes in our space, or, you know, the tables in our space are arranged in a certain way, you know. So this is 1-point perspective. Okay, a 2-point perspective is when we're starting to look like this direction. Okay, so what happens if we're starting to look here? 2-point perspective. And so now we're looking at this same room, right? But now we're looking at the corner. Okay, and the boxes in the room, we're seeing them on angle, right? We're seeing 2 sides. We're not just seeing things straight on anymore, right? Some things might be rotated and we might be seeing them straight on. But a lot of things will be square to the room, right? And so we'll have these, well, this will be the closest to us, right? And then these will be receding away. These angles will be receding away. One will be receding towards the north vanishing point, and one will be receding to the west vanishing point. Okay, and that's kind of like however we think about it. If we could look this way, or if we're looking this way, or if we're looking that way, right? All of these situations require a 2-point perspective setup. Okay, so let's take a look at that now. We've looked at one vanishing point. In this case, we've generally called it the north vanishing point. When we're looking straight ahead, I mean, 1-point perspective, we could also call it the east vanishing point, or the west vanishing point, or the south vanishing point. We also have what's called the nadir. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Nadir, and the zenith. So the nadir is like looking straight down at your feet. And we had some examples of that. We had somebody did a 1-point for their activity. They had a person in their bed, you know, looking down on them inside of a room. This is also 1-point perspective. Okay, so in this case, north would be that way, right? Right, we're not going to even see that vanishing point. East would be this way. But the vanishing point we're working with is the nadir. Okay, looking straight down. Okay, so that is also totally acceptable. And then, of course, we could have the total opposite, where we're looking straight up at the zenith, right? And so you can imagine a room here where maybe there's some kind of light fixture or a ceiling fan. Something kind of spinning, or, you know, something like that. Maybe we have windows, but we're going to have a vanishing point here in the center somewhere, and everything will converge to that vanishing point. Maybe there's a door here. By the way, I'm going to show you guys a tip in a little bit that's going to be like, oh man, again, why didn't you tell me this yesterday? Or why didn't you tell me this when I was doing this last assignment? You'll be very mad with me. It'll make your lives easier. But it's good to kind of see the not so quick way of doing things sometimes. All right, so we could also have that where we're looking at the zenith, right? The top of our scene. And we're not going to cover it, but there's also something called 3-point perspective. So we have 2-point perspective where we're looking at, say, the north and the west, or the north and the east, or west and south, or, you know, south and east. But we could also be kind of also angling up or angling down in our vantage, where we're also starting to introduce the zenith or the nadir, right? And then we're going to kind of have 3-point perspective. And that's more so when we're starting to look at something on, you know, on its end. Oops. All right, so you can imagine looking down at some buildings in a city or something like that from way up above. Okay, now we have vanishing point here, right? Vanishing point here and vanishing point down here. All right, so this would be our nadir. This would be our east VP, right? Vanishing point. This would be our north VP. Okay, we have a horizon line. We have a line here, and we also have lines here and here. Okay, and everything would run and converge to each of these different points. Okay, but we're not worried about that today. We're going to think about we're going to talk about 2-point perspective. Okay, so we're gonna get rid of one of these guys, and we're just going to focus on the north and the east vanishing point and talk about how can we draw these things on their angles. And it's fairly simple. Okay, so let's get back to it. All right, so the first thing we start with again is our horizon line. That's always number one. And that's going to basically just dictate everything else in our scene. Okay, that's basically telling us where the vantage point is of our viewer, or what's our point of view. So are we a person in the scene that's kind of eye level with all the other people? Are we a teacher, standing up at the front of the classroom and the students are sitting down and we're looking up above their heads? Are we a student looking at our teacher and our eye level is like lower down and our teacher's above us, or their head is above us? Are we a ghost looking down on a character? Is this a third person video game where you're just over the shoulder? Is it a first person video game where you're eye level and kind of seeing the world from the first person view? Is it a what are those games called? RTS game where it's kind of like more of a high, very, very high horizon line, right? Maybe the horizon line is out of frame if your kind of monitor is here. Maybe you're not even seeing kind of what's off where that horizon line is, and all the elements in our scene are living in here, right? In this space. All of this is important. All of this is kind of impacts how an audience is going to feel. When we show them a picture or when we present them our video game, that vantage point is highly impactful, right? It makes a huge difference. Can make us feel like this is impersonal, right? If we're way up here and our characters that we're controlling are a little small like this, we kind of feel like they're insignificant. We can kind of just tell them what to do and march them to their death, and it's like it doesn't really impact us. But if we're playing a Mario game, right, and characters like third person and we always see them, we kind of care more what happens to them, right? And we have a little Goomba. Goombas are shorter than us, right? So they'd be below your horizon line. So we can control all of these things, right? We have control of all this. But basically, what's the most important thing? What do all of these have in common? They have a horizon line. Everything is dictated. Everything's relationship is relative to the horizon line, okay, which is our vantage point on the scene. All right. So horizon line is number one. Okay, and this goes even if you're not doing linear perspective at all. If you're not doing 1-point perspective or 2-point perspective, if you're just overlapping shapes like we talked about, you still want to have an understanding of where that horizon line is, right? If you have a mountain here and another mountain here, you still want to know where that horizon line is, okay? All right, anyways, horizon line is number 1. The number 2 thing, what's after the horizon line? What do you guys think? The second thing is going to be our vanishing point, or points. Okay. Our vanishing points. Okay, so we're gonna have 2 vanishing points in this case. We're gonna have our, we could say anything, call them anything, but we'll call them the north. All right, call them the north vanishing point. And we'll call this one the east vanishing point. Okay, the NVP and the EVP. Okay, and so again, if we're looking at from above with a compass, we're going to have north here, east here, south here, west here. Okay, and we are looking like that. That's our vantage point. We're looking this way. Okay, so we're seeing on our left hand side, we're going to see our north vanishing point. On our right hand side, we'll see our east vanishing point. All right, so we need our vanishing points. Okay, and then the third thing is going to be our vanishing lines. Okay, and the vanishing lines are basically, once we have our horizon line, we have our vanishing points. Okay, and then we have our, so we have our horizon line, we have our north vanishing point, our east vanishing point, then we need our vanishing lines, and our vanishing lines are basically these guys, right? These lines that come out, extend, like so. Okay, and then with these I can kind of do this, and any wall that is facing north, okay, so it's going to recede like this. Or sorry, this wall, let's say this wall is facing south. So if we were to draw an arrow in the direction that this wall is facing, okay, it's going to face the opposite direction of this, but you'll see how it recedes. Okay, so any vertical line will stay straight vertical, right? There won't be any convergence because we're not introducing the nadir or the zenith. Sorry, the nadir or the zenith. So all the vertical lines are just going to be parallel with each other, but the lines kind of we're not going to have any horizontal lines anymore, right? Like in 1 point perspective, we're not going to have any horizontal lines. All those lines are now going to be kind of receding back to either the north vanishing point here or the east vanishing point. Okay. And so that's basically how this works. Nothing super crazy, but we'll go through it together and kind of like break it down a little further than we have here. Okay, so let's kind of talk through how I think is a good way to leverage the digital approach that we get in Photoshop. So what I do is I'll make a line here. This will be a guide line, right? Again, I can move these if I go into my move tool. I can just move this around. Okay, so that's going to be my horizon line. I'll put a new layer here. I'll call this guides, and I'll just get my line tool. Okay, make sure my line tool is maybe 1 or 2 pixels, and I'll just draw across here on this guide layer. If I hide my guides, by pressing control semicolon, you'll see that it hides and reveals those, right? Now here's the interesting thing. If we look at this composition, this seems like a pretty comfortable kind of vantage point on this building, right? Or whatever this is. Look where my vanishing points are. They're like way to the left and right. They're outside the frame. Okay, so this is another thing that we have. It's called a frame. And we'll talk about that as well. But basically, this is our composition window. It can be any shape, it can be any size. We can show or reveal whichever part of our composition we want. And let's just quickly take a look at that. So let's just say I have this scene. Let's do this on a new layer. Oops. I'll just make it black. I'll just cut out a little window in it. Just press delete here. So what's the significance of this? This is a frame, so I can basically reveal any part of my composition using this frame. So I could focus on any aspect of this. I can kind of say, oh, I want to kind of focus on, there's like a door here and there's a character walking in here, or I want to focus on maybe there's some action happening here, two characters talking to each other, or I want to focus like more so down, maybe there's a character lying on the street or something like that, or I want to focus more up in the air, some stuff's going up, there's a plane flying, and it's got a banner trailing behind it. Basically, we want to think of our frame here as independent from our actual composition. But one thing you'll notice about this frame, and I'll just reduce its opacity. Generally speaking, in order for it to look good, for my composition to look good, I have to stay within the constraints of my vanishing points, okay, in 2-point perspective. I can't go like here. I can't compose out here, because then, my perspective kind of falls apart. I kind of have to stay in this range. If I were to put my frame here, at this point I'm kind of looking at more of like a 1-point perspective. I'm looking straight towards the east, no? So it's kind of like I probably should just use a 1-point perspective scene, right? If I'm looking right here, I'm looking straight towards the north, I should probably use a 1-point perspective scene. I don't need two vanishing points. But when I'm looking somewhere in between east and north, that's when I want to have a 2-point perspective scene. So that's all to say, I recommend making sure that your vanishing points are outside of your composition window. Okay, so I've seen many compositions where, like, you have a piece of paper. This is very common when you're working on a piece of paper and you're learning about 2-point perspective, and you have your, say, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and it's like this. And you want to do 2-point perspective, and you want to do a city block. I've seen this so many times. If you draw a line, a horizon line here, you want to put one vanishing point here and one vanishing point here, because that's as wide as you can go on your page easily, right? But then you kind of get this really kind of warped perspective, and things don't look as natural as they potentially could. It's not too bad if we're working in horizontal, right? A horizontal composition like this. But it starts to fall apart a little bit if, say, our page is like thinner, like this, or we're using it in portrait, right? And we still want our vanishing points to be the widest point of our page. Then, things are going to start to look even wonkier. Alright, that's where we're going to get these kind of weird, really elongated, kind of like distorted looking buildings. Okay, technically it's correct, right? The perspective is all sound, but it doesn't have a natural or pleasing appearance to us, right? It kind of looks a little forced, too extreme, We have a sidewalk here, and it just looks like way too pushed. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have our horizon line be its own thing. We want to have our vanishing points. And we want to have our composition window as a third element. Okay, so it's its own thing. It can move. Let's do it on another layer so that we can easily do this. So our composition window, we can easily move it where we want to move it. Okay, but we don't ever push it beyond this point, because now we're looking at more of a 1 point perspective scene. Why not just do 1 point? Now I'm looking at a 1 point perspective scene. Why not just do 1 point? Okay, I want to be somewhere comfortably in the middle of these two vanishing points. Okay, so the way we solve that in digital is I don't put my vanishing point here and here. I actually put them here and here. Okay, so outside of my frame, really nice and wide, really far apart from each other. Okay, and so what I do is I'll drag out 2 more guides. One here. Okay, that'll be my, say, my north vanishing point. And I'll drag out another one here. This will be my, say, east vanishing point. Okay. And I can change my layout here in Photoshop by tapping the F key. Okay, if I tap the F key a couple times, I can kind of get rid of like most of my user interface there. I should be able to hover to the edges of my screen. And they should pop back up, I think. No? There we go. Okay, if I hover to the top, I should get my menu options. No? Maybe not. But I can get my tools and everything like that. I'm surprised I'm not getting my menu options up top. But anyways, I can cycle through. So this is my default, and if I press F once, I can basically move more freely. I can get my composition right to the edges of my screen, and that's kind of what I like. So what's next? So to do our vanishing lines, it's going to go back to my guides there. To do my vanishing lines, I would basically take my line tool. I'll start drawing here, and you see it'll snap. You can press the space bar while I'm moving it. You see how it will snap to that intersection? And I can basically just draw out my vanishing lines like this. Okay, so that's really helpful, really handy. But we can do something even better than that. It's not as targeted, but it's kind of just gives us a really nice framework to work within. So I'm going to make another layer here, a new layer. I'll call this one Vanishing Lines. Okay. And I'm going to use my shape tool, but instead of using a line mode, I'm going to click and hold on it, and I'll set it to a polygon tool. Okay. This is by the way the thing that you'd be like, oh cool, like why didn't you tell us that earlier, Gavin? This would have saved me like tons of work when I was doing X, Y, and Z. Well, it'll save you tons of work going forward. All right, so we're going to switch to our polygon tool. If I draw a polygon, you see I get by default, I get like a nice star. If I hold down the shift key, I get a properly constrained star, like so. So that's kind of what we want, but let's change it up. So I'm going to go to this gear icon up top. I'm going to click on that. Make sure I'm in pixels again, by the way. And thickness I can leave at 1. The star ratio, I'll set this all the way to 100%. Oops, sorry, no, 0% I should say. So star ratio, let's drag this all the way down to 1 or 1%. So now when I drag, you see how I get this nice like Mercedes, or no, it's not Mercedes. Mercedes is what, Chevrolet or something like that. We get this 5-pointed star. But we can actually change the number of points here. You see where it says 5 here? We can actually drag this all the way up to 100. Now if I draw it out, we see we get one of these guys. So why is that useful to us? I can actually start here and drag this out, holding the Alt key. and the shift key, and if I just drag this out really big, I get a whole bunch of vanishing lines that all go back to this vanishing point. I can do the same thing from here. Let's zoom way out. I'll hold down the Alt key so it drags from the center, and then also hold the Shift key while we do it, and then drag it out. So now we have like this nice grid that we can kind of work into. I can dial down the opacity there. I could turn off my guides temporarily. All right. And now if I just wanted to sketch, I can easily do it. I can kind of like say, I have a building here and it goes to about here, and then it kind of comes over this way. And I have these guides to kind of support my my sketches, right? And I can kind of recede back this way, kind of come down like so. And I don't have a vanishing line here, but I can kind of approximate where this next one should be based on those two vanishing lines. So I can easily kind of map this out, plot this out. I can say, oh, there's a door here, right? I have this vanishing line handy. I can make a door, I can make windows. Right? You can have like say a mat. And if we really want to be precise, we can always bring back our guide. All right, so we can go to our guides. We can press Control semicolon here. We can go to back to our regular line mode instead of our polygon tool. And we can click out and drag like so to say I want to have a sidewalk right there. And then here as well. Okay. So that's ultimately, you know, a kind of just a hack, kind of a quick way to kind of make a nice, almost perspective grid that we can work into and work out our perspective. All right. Chrysler. Thanks, Ariana. So that's ultimately what we can do. So let's talk about two-point perspective, and let's do a little bit of exercise or practice here. I want you guys, just like we did last class, I want you to draw a box below your horizon line, a box above your horizon line, a box crossing your horizon line, and then we'll move on to like drawing a pyramid shape, a spherical shape, an elliptical shape, like a cylinder. And just a few other, you know, basic shapes. If you remember, if you recall, we can find the center of a form by drawing an X through the corners, right? And that's going to give us the dead center. So this will be the middle from here to here. And then if I were to go from our vanishing point through that cross to here, that's going to give me the vertical halfway height. We could also, since this is just a regular vertical line, we could also measure it, but it's good to use the information we have down here. Okay, so I could have like a sloped version. I could have like a some kind of slanted roof there. I'll just come from here to here, like so. This will extend downwards to this same vanishing line that I have established here, like so. This will go back here to this vanishing point. It'll snap. Okay. To get how far out, I need to go through this back corner to this line, right? From here to here. So this to this vanishing point. So starting here, go through this corner, extend out, until I intersect with this line. So this is how far out this form is coming. And then I can extend up from that line to this line. And then from here, back up to that halfway line. Okay, so now I have a perfect like little slanted little canopy or roof on this building. And again, this is all guide work, so I can dial down the opacity on this. Okay, and I can go in on another layer and just tighten things up. Okay, once I've committed to a certain design or whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys, let's say, say 10 minutes or so. I want to see you guys make some basic shapes, and I'll make some too. So just make a square, a cube, or a box shape below our horizon line. We'll make a box shape crossing our horizon line. We'll make a box shape above our horizon line. Okay. Okay, while you guys do that, I'll just tighten this up a little bit. So I'm doing this on a new layer. So this would be my kind of clean line. Yep, question? Go ahead and unmute your mic on YouTube or on Google Meet and just mention your question. There will be a delay, but I'll answer. You know what we could also do, guys, as I'm thinking about it, we could probably just I could also go in the Discord first year lectures channel, and then anyone who has a question, you could just ask me in there. That could also work. But for now, we'll just use Google Meet. All right, so all I'm doing is taking that rough work I did and just kind of refining my shape. And then, of course, as we did last time, I can go in and I can get my polygonal lasso tool, and I can just kind of get this shape. There's some tricks. I'll teach you guys another trick. So, as long as I have all of this on one layer, this clean line on one layer, if you hold down the Alt key and click on a eye icon, it will reveal It will hide everything except what you've selected, what you've clicked on. And I can click it again to toggle that. So what I can do is I can get my magic wand tool, make sure it's set to contiguous, and I can select outside of my object here. And you'll see it selects everything outside my object, so long as that's a fully kind of closed off line. It's going to select everything on the outside, and then I'll just kind of unhide this. I'm going to make a brand new layer. Okay, and I can use this to help me fill. I don't want to fill the outside. If I fill the outside, if I just fill, I'm gonna get that. So I need to press Control-Shift-I to invert my selection. Okay, or I can go up to Select, and I can go to Inverse Selection, Control-Shift-I here. Okay, and then I can basically choose a color. Hold down the Alt key, press backspace, and just fill with that that color. I'll call this my building flat, and then I can make clipping mask layers above that. Again, make a new layer above this flat fill. Hold down the Alt key, and then I can go in and I can fill. I just filled it with the same color, and I'll just set that to multiply. Okay, and so I can get like a nice kind of like shadow shape there. Probably want this to be a slightly different color than these. So I'll do the same thing for these guys. And in general, when you're working with linear perspective, usually, especially if it's outdoors, anything that's like flat is going to generally have the same-ish color or hue or value. Very, very similar. You know, of course, if there's some like cracks or if there's some dirt or things, you'll break it up with that, with the texture. But the general lighting information should be fairly similar. So you're not going to see like, I often see things like this. Let's make another clipping mask layer. So sometimes I'll see like a shading. I'll see like shading like this. Oops. But that just doesn't make sense because this suggests a round form, you know, but this is a flat surface. So because it's flat, it's just, you just light it kind of the same way. But this panel, it's facing the light. It's hitting the light at a different, the light is hitting it at a different angle than it would be hitting this. So these guys, we just want to make sure that these are both kind of like the same value. This one will also make it just a little bit darker. Using my Control U to adjust the hue saturation, I'll just make that a little darker, like so. So we can imagine the light source is coming down, right, on an angle. So it's hitting this most directly. It's kind of hitting this at a glancing angle, but it's not really touching this at all. So none of this is catching light almost at all. So that's going to be the darkest part. Okay, so that's generally how we'll kind of handle light and shadow on very geometric shape, geometric forms. Okay. Okay. All right. So the star vanishing lines, you will go into your line tool, okay, or your shape tool, which is the U hotkey to get into your shape tool. We want the polygon tool, and up top, the thickness, we can set that to 1. The star ratio, we want to set to 1%. We can set from center also. We can click that on. And we can also actually, I didn't do it, but we could also set proportional on. Okay, so the ratio is 1 to 1. And then we want to set, this is the number of sides, we want to set that as high as we can to 100. Okay, and that'll basically give us one of those. I can't see it because I'm on a clipping mask layer. But it's going to give us this. Okay, and we want to draw this from our vanishing points. Okay, we need to zoom out really far because we kind of have to extend this right. You know, see how the edges there are just extending past the edge of my canvas. So I just need to go out far enough to be able to do that. Okay. So again, zoom way out and then just do that. Okay. All right. Cool. So let's kind of continue on. Let me actually draw in my ground and sky as well. So on a new layer, I'll just kind of go in with a marquee selection, a box marquee, and I'll just fill in my ground layer here. I'll make the sky lighter, like so. All right, so that's how we kind of start moving towards a more kind of realized piece, okay? But we had all that, we had a whole bunch of construction lines to help us get there. Okay, but in the end we hide it. We just hide all of it. Okay, so again, we start with a horizon line. We find our vanishing points, our two vanishing points, and then we start drawing out our vanishing lines. Okay, the fourth thing we want to talk about, we kind of alluded to it, was the frame. Again, F5 to open up our brush options. So our frame. So what is our frame again? That's just our composition window. Okay, so I have this building. Let's say it's all kind of good to go. Let's bring back our frame here that we created. I'll just make it bigger. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just punch a bigger hole in it. But the aspect ratio of this frame is whatever I want it to be. I can choose whatever I want. It's my choice. It's an arbitrary choice. Sometimes you kind of have to follow certain specifications, you know. But if you're just doing pure art, if you're just like I'm going to be in artist mode, and I'm just gonna, you know, make this the way I want, you can choose. It's up to you. And then with this frame, this is kind of like our viewfinder. We can choose where in our scene we want to focus. Right? If we want to, we've done all this nice work, but maybe we don't even ever want to show it. We just want to kind of deal with what's happening over here. Right? And that's our composition space. Right? But it's up to us. Okay? Maybe we want to kind of go out over here. Or if you want to have a little bit more showing. Okay, so we want to always kind of keep our framing flexible. Okay, so we just put it on a different layer. It is our choice, it's arbitrary. And then when we're happy with this, we can basically just copy this. Right, if we wanted to, Control C. Or Control, another hotkey, Control Shift C. copy visible. So copy visible, so this will copy across all my layers. So whatever I have selected here, even though this is across multiple layers, if I press Control Shift C, right? And then I press Control V to paste, you'll see that it's copied here, everything across all my layers. Okay, so then if this, say this was the thumbnail, I can now take this into a new document. File, new, create, could paste this in, could dial down its opacity, and use this as a plan for my actual drawing. So I could say this is supposed to be a barn, you know, but these are all like decrepit and these panels are breaking. So now I can kind of go in and put my like flourishes, but I don't have to worry about the perspective. It's already been worked out. I could say there's a hole in the roof here, you know. We can see some of that frame. So there's some grass here. So you see how we can kind of go in and have fun with this and, you know, not worry. Like I really am a big fan personally of kind of sorting out the kind of complex stuff, right? Kind of plotting that stuff out, mapping it out so that I can go in and not have to worry about it after the fact. So that's kind of how I recommend, you know, we kind of use this. You can have like a hay bale or something. Right, and this door we could say, oh, it's fallen off its hinges. Okay, this is our horizon line, so we're good there. Could say there's some mountains in the distant background. Maybe there's some kind of path coming up to the door here. And don't feel like you have to jump out of your kind of your planning mode as quickly as I did. I'm just showing you how we could potentially approach this, right? And then we would turn this off, or we'd use this as a component of our final piece. Okay, we can have a little person in here. Maybe there's like a monster in here or something, or there's a person kind of venturing out, kind of just arriving at this place, or whatever. Okay, but at this point, we want to start telling our story. We want to get into the details. I love details personally. My issue has always been the details. If I go into them too soon, I lose sight of the larger kind of picture. Like I kind of might mix up or mess up my some of the technical stuff, like because I went into the details too soon. Or my overall composition doesn't work because I didn't get the right framing, you know? So all of these different things that can happen. So we want to stay as flexible as possible. And how do we do that? We just keep our frame flexible, right? So we can say, yes, I like that. Or, you know what if we kind of framed it more like this? You know, more more of a kind of a wider horizontal frame instead. Okay, and then we would take this as our composition. We kind of work with that, or we choose. We can kind of pick and choose, or maybe there's a guy sitting up on the roof, and that's what we want to be our composition. So we're looking up at this scene. But you can see that's interesting. It really drastically changes our whole impression of the shot. It gives us a totally different vibe. I could change things like my light direction. So I could say here, in here, because I have these all broken out into separate layers, I could, change these. I could change the layer style. Change this to, something else. I could just choose what I want to be dark, what I want to be light. I could make it all dark, Could make this whole thing much darker. I can make it a nighttime scene, right, by changing these guys as well. The point is, and I'll keep saying it over and over again, you want to explore. You want to have the flexibility to explore, whether you're doing it the way I'm showing you here, or you have another method that you use. You want to be flexible enough to do that kind of exploration. Okay, so this day scene could now be a night scene. The only thing I'd say is if you're going to do a change like this, capture it. Okay, so like capture that change, Control-Shift-C. Okay, and then somewhere you want to kind of have all those options side to side to side. So you have our dark version, right? Our nighttime version. We have our daytime version. Right? And out of these we would choose. How would we choose? Anyone guess? We would think of what is our purpose. We'd always refer back to our purpose. If it's like a cheerful kind of daytime scene, I'm going for this. If it's a creepy kind of eerie kind of vibe that I'm going for this. Right? So you always go back to like, what am I going for again? What am I aiming at? And then that should dictate what kind of choices that you're gonna make. Okay. But here, what I'm showing you is that again that we can our value choices are they are somewhat subjective, but they're also a modular component that we can tweak. They're independent from the perspective framing that I did. Okay, so that perspective framing, is independent from everything else. The framing that I have, like the composition window that I've chosen, that's independent, from the colors that I'm choosing. But everything adds together in the end to make like a really interesting scene. I have an issue of sometimes being indecisive, and I like this because it lets me kind of gives me a few options before I have to commit to a choice. And if you're too indecisive, you could do 1,000 different variations and then still not come up with a decision, right? And that's why I say like give yourself at least 3 options, probably no more than like 10 options, and then choose from those choices, right? And if you can't make the choice yourself, you can always show it to other people and get their 2 cents. Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Do an informal poll, right? See how many, if you ask 10 people which one do they like the best, and then you choose the one that they like the best, and that's the one you commit to. Or ask them, if this is my purpose, I'm trying to go for this I'm trying to convey this message, which of these do you think best conveys that to you? And then from there you kind of which one you will move forward with. The hotkey for grouping is Control-G. Okay, Control-G to group. All right, guys. Let's close that. All right, so I'm just going to undo here. I don't like this, excuse me, very dark version. It's too spooky. So we have this, all right? And again, what I want you guys to do is take a look at drawing some objects below, above the horizon line. I'll do it really quickly now. And then crossing the horizon line, okay? And then we'll take a look at how we can make a cylindrical shape, a cone shape, and a pyramid shape. Okay, and then there's one other really important thing for all kinds of perspective that we want to be aware of. Say we have a tree, for example. Let me turn off my guide. I'm just going to take this group. I'm just going to dial down its opacity so I can still see through to what I had there before. So let's say I have a tree. My tree is here. I want to make sure my tree is kind of the right size relative to this home. So how does that work? We can always look at the kind of the horizontal plane or the horizontal level of things and kind of judge from there, right? So this horizontal level, if I have a character, let's make them on a new layer. If I were to draw a person, in order to make them this big, that person's actually a giant. Okay, assuming this is a regular sized door and this is a kind of like a 3 or 4 story building. This person is actually gigantic. How do I know that? The horizon line helps kind of break it down for us, and the position of the character's feet also helps to break it down for us. So if the character's eyes, our horizon line here is above this door. It's like, let's say this is about 10 feet. We could say that horizon line here is about 15 feet in the air or so, right? Because it's above our door. We're looking down on this door, which we can say the door is probably 8 feet tall. So maybe this is even like closer to 17, 18 feet. So if this door is 18 feet, or sorry, 8 feet high, and this horizon line is far above that, then this character whose eye level is at the horizon, this guy must be gigantic. Okay, unless this person is somehow standing on top of something that increases his height. Okay, and then we don't know how tall that thing is. This person, you know, if he's just standing on the ground, is a bit of a giant, right? How do I know? I can take a line, a vertical line through the character's feet and head, and if I go anywhere from that vertical line back to my vanishing line, I can plot in the height of my character at any of these points. All of these represent the same height of my character. Okay, so this character here, let's go for, is this big, right? So I would use this for trees, I would use this for characters, and I would use this to make sure that I don't draw something too big, you know? Because if this character wants to go in through that door, right, and he's this big and this lines up horizontally, I've made a mistake. So my character at this point, you know, if I were to draw his feet here, would be, can go from this here, this line across to this line, go straight up and down. My character would be that tall. Okay, so there's no way he's getting in that door. You know, unless I deliberately want to make this a giant, I've probably made a mistake. Okay, so what we want to do is when we design our things, or when we're drawing something, we start with something that we already know the size of. So this door, we say this is about 8 feet. Our character is probably about this high. Okay, relative to that door. And this is still kind of a big person. Okay, and then now I can draw out horizontally from his top and bottom. If I wanted to redraw that character over here, he'd be this big. Okay, if I want to draw this character further away or closer, again, I'll take that vertical line. Anywhere on this vanishing line, doesn't have to be one of my vanishing points, anywhere on the vanishing line, I could draw a line through his head and through his feet. And that would tell me how big this character would need to be if he's way back here, or if he's way close to us. This works in 1-point perspective, this works in 2-point perspective. Something similar would work in 3-point perspective. Okay, but that's how big our character would be at these different places. And if I want to put a character over here, right, again, I could just take the same measurement like so, transfer it over here, and say that would be the height of my character standing. At this point in my scene, or at this location. You'll notice I'm drawing these little shadows. Shadows are really helpful to kind of set your characters in a space. You want to kind of make sure the shadow shapes are like all similar, like if I have a directional light. So if this part is in the most shadow, this part of the building, my shadow, my light source is kind of going like that. So the shadow will fall here. My tree's shadow, same thing, will fall this way. Okay, and these characters' shadows will fall this way as well. Okay, and that just helps to set everything into the same space. Okay. 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 All right, so just glancing at the meeting, and I see that there was an issue with the, oh, that was an older issue, so I already caught that. Okay, so, all right, so this is basically it. So let's draw some trees. We want to make sure our tree, so once we have like one measurement, we have our character, we have our door, we have our character, you know, how big should my tree be? Would it make sense if I drew my tree this big? We never want to be guessing when we're doing perspective. Like how big or small should something be, right? This tree is way too small, right? So if I'm drawing a tree way back here, I don't want to be drawing my tree like this, right? Why? Those trees are too little, right? There's another easy way we can tell. Everything that's the same size in my scene will have the same relationship to the horizon line. And so what do I mean by that? So this character, no matter where he is, he's going to be at his current size. He'll be about 3 of themselves below the horizon line. Okay. Okay. So the tree, if my tree is like this is kind of like a too small tree, right? Unless it's a tree that's just growing. But this tree is probably too small. This tree looks like pretty good. This is a good sized tree. All right. So let's draw our character next to this tree. So again, the vertical line, I can go to any point on my horizon line. Okay, and a vertical line between the top and bottom, that's going to tell me how big my character would be at that particular point. Okay, this is probably just a little on the big side, but okay, so that's how big my character would be next to this tree. So this relationship, okay, so if I look at where the ground level is, him to this guy to this tree is about right. Okay, so this tree feels good in size. Okay, so if you remember, each of these characters crosses the horizon line, or the relationship to the horizon line is about the same. Okay, so this tree, I could either go, draw from the bottom of the tree to the top of the tree, kind of find a point on the horizon line, and draw that in, and kind of work out my tree from there, right, to get the correct size. Or there's kind of a neat trick we can do. We can look at our tree and we can see where the horizon line is crossing that tree. So every tree we draw should be crossing that horizon line at approximately the same point. Okay, to be the same size. Okay, so that's a really kind of a quick way we can check and make sure that we're on the right page. So if we want to draw a really big tree in the foreground here, we could do that. Just make sure that it's kind of crossing at about the same point. Okay, it's going to be like a big tree like this. We're not going to see all of it, but we get the right scaling, kind of get that right effect by having it big like that. Let's put this on up above. Okay. So that's what that looks like, guys. That's kind of like a really important consideration. Just making sure that we draw things at the right size, relative to each other when we're working in perspective. Okay. So establish like how tall one thing is, and then use that as a measurement for the height of everything else. Okay. And then you should be in good shape. All right. So we can take a short break, guys. Let's take a break until 7:20. I'm going to just draw in a shape above the horizon line, a shape below the horizon line, and a shape crossing the horizon line. And then we'll also take a look at drawing some like cone shapes and pyramid shapes. And then we'll wrap up by talking about how to draw a character in perspective. Okay, in 2-point perspective. All right. So guys, we'll resume at 7:20. Okay, but in the meantime, like I said, I will just draw a few shapes here. Any questions so far? Okay, if you have questions, just I'm keeping an eye on the Google Meet. So if you have a question, I'll take a look at that. And the easiest for me is if you put your mic on, then I'll just hear that you have a question, or you just ask your question, and then I'll answer it. All right, so I'm just going to take a different color here. I'll bring back my guides, so control a semicolon to bring my guides back. I'll go in with my line tool. I'll just make another layer here. And let's just draw a object below the horizon line. So this time I'm taking advantage of my guides. I'm just going to be something a little bit more precise. Oops. Here. Okay. With these intersecting points, I'll just draw up the front near corners. I'm just making a simple box here. I'm going to tap the F key here to hide most of my UI. Oops. There's also something called a diagonal vanishing point, and I encourage you guys to research that, find out what that is. We're not gonna cover it in class today, just because it's gonna take a little while to set up, and it's some layers of complexity there. But it's absolutely something that is worth investigating, and I think you guys should to learn how to do it. But it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, so just making a simple box here. Okay, I always recommend draw through. Okay, let's find that back corner right here. We know we've done it right if that back corner hooks up properly. Being able to snap to the guides makes a world of difference in terms of accuracy and precision. I was a little bit off here, but not too bad. Let's draw another one above the horizon line. Okay. So I'm going to go for the bottom face first here. So I'll go from here to here. From here to here. So this is going to be a much bigger structure. And then I'll just go up from one of these. Across. Up from here to this new line that I've established. From here to here. Up from here. Remember, you can hold down the space bar just to nudge the position of that line. And then we'll do the back side as well. Okay, so that's our box above our horizon line. This could be some kind of floating cube above the home here or something like that. This could be a crate down here. And let's do something crossing the horizon line. So for anything above the horizon line, we look up underneath it. So we're seeing the bottom of this. We don't see the top. Here we see the top. We don't see the bottom. And then anything crossing the horizon line, we don't see the top of it or the bottom of it. Okay, let's go for a vertical line here. Make sure that's crossing our horizon line. Okay, and while it is a little awkward to have our vanishing lines so far spaced apart, it does help us make a more kind of natural, pleasing composition. We don't get like a forced kind of crazy distortion like we had here, where we're trying to cram these vanishing points, you know, within this this picture frame. It's always best to have them comfortably outside our frame window. Okay. So you don't have to do it like this where I'm putting the vanishing points outside of my document. You can put them inside the document, but then just make sure the composition you're drawing is smaller, okay? So you're not going to the full edges of your composition, your document size here. Okay, let's keep going from here. to here, here to here, here to here. That's pretty good. And then from here down, like so. Okay. If I were to kind of like refine these, I'm going to press Control-Shift-N here to just make a new layer. Change my color, make my line a little thicker. Just refine these so you can kind of see what I'm seeing. And we'll imagine that this is partially tucked behind this building, so we're not going to see all of that bottom plane. It's overlap, right? Remember overlap, how important that is. So the lower building is overlapping that upper structure. Brutalist architecture, is that is that what you call the I know it's a term, I'm not super familiar with it, but is that like the same as what they've done with OCAD? Okay, and this box in the back. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm a fan. It's interesting. Okay, so now we have this, and if we press F7, F7 will toggle open your layers, by the way. I can turn off my guides there, and we're left with some kind of cool looking shapes. Okay, and then to just fully carry this home, I could just throw in some flat colors or some values and kind of really help to kind of really bring it into realization. All right. Okay, guys, so we're still good on time. Let's talk about like making a cone. We talked about it last class. We've looked at it with 1 point perspective. It's almost exactly the same in 2 point perspective. We do have to kind of, continuously make some F6, by the way, to bring up your colors. I'll just put these here. F5, brushes, brush options, F6. So I'm going to get back to my red color here, get my line tool, and I will draw again from the corner, one corner to another corner, like so. Let's turn that off. And if I go vertically up here, or let's go, sorry, one corner here at the top as well, so we know how tall to go. Right, so we just couldn't see this intersection here. Now let's isolate this selection. Okay, so we can go from here to here, all right, to give us the height. And then we can go from here to here to get our pyramid shape. We won't see that backside. Okay, and if we're to clarify what this looks like, it would look like this. Okay, so that's our simple pyramid shape. Okay, I'll make another different shape. Let's talk about making an ellipse. So if we want to make an ellipse, it's kind of like an involved process in making an ellipse, but we're going to cheat just a little bit. We're going to get our red, go back to our shapes layer, get our line. So once we find the X, right, we're going to go through and we're going to get each of these parallel lines as well. This one. Just try to be as precise as I can here. Not too bad, not great, but not too bad. And then we don't have to do the other ones. We could just draw up here to get these guys. And sorry for all the lines, but the key points that we want to kind of be looking at are this, 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 and this, 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 and this. And so now with these points we can basically make an ellipse, right? So I'll do this on another layer. So we're going to try to kind of like get this nice curvature. We don't want a football shape. We don't want we want to pinch the corners. We want it to be nice and rounded as best as possible. And ideally we want to start with like a square shape. So I haven't talked about how we could make sure that this is a square from the top, because there's, you know, without there's a step that we need to take to make sure that we're measuring our space properly, and for that we need something called a diagonal vanishing point, which again I encourage you guys to research on your own. A diagonal vanishing point will allow us to make sure that we're doing a perfect grid in perspective. Without using the diagonal vanishing point, we're kind of guessing where each of these points are. We can fake it by, if you were to think about looking at from the top view, we have north, east, right? North, east, south, west. The diagonal vanishing point would basically be, in this case, if north and east are my vanishing points, straight northeast would be my diagonal vanishing point. Okay, so if you imagine you were looking down at the floor and you're in a room with like tiles, right, and they're arranged in a grid, right, you could say each of these lines, each of these lines runs north, right, each of these lines runs east, or east-west at least. But if we were to go from corner to corner, like here, we could say this runs northeast. So what putting in a diagonal vanishing point basically does, it allows us to kind of figure out where these diagonal lines would converge to. These also would have a converging point. So we'd have our horizon line, we'll have our north vanishing point, we'll have our east vanishing point, and then we'll have something called a D diagonal vanishing point. The diagonal vanishing point is relative to our picture frame. So it's basically, it depends on where our picture frame is. But basically what it does, if we have this, we want to figure out, I want to make these squares. the diagonal vanishing point, if we draw it through the corner from here to that intersection, technically this should now be a square. If I go through that back corner, these should be squares now, if that makes sense. Right, from here to here, and each of these intersections going back. That should basically give me a grid on the ground. Okay, so generally speaking, if I look at an ellipse, an elliptical shape, or a circle, an ellipse is basically a circle seen in perspective. If I look at it from the top, a circle is like that, right? The length, the width are the same. But if I try to draw a circle from a rectangle, or so if I try to draw it from a rectangle, I'll get an oblong shape. I'll get an oval. All right, so this is top view. So if I start with in perspective, if I start with a rectangular shape in perspective, right, like this, and I go through those steps, I find the cross, I find this line and this line, and then I'm like, I'm good to go. Let me make my ellipse. My ellipse will probably not look right because I'm not starting with a square. I need to make sure I'm starting with a square. But to make a square, you need a diagonal vanishing point, and that's just a whole other process. So research this. Okay, so how do you get that in 2-point perspective? It also exists in 1-point perspective, by the way. And there's kind of an interesting relationship between 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective, because in 2-point perspective, we have a north vanishing point and an east vanishing point, and the straight middle of that would be the diagonal vanishing point, or northeast in this case. 1-point perspective, we're looking straight north, right, or straight east. The diagonal vanishing point in that case would be the northeast, if that makes sense. So if we're 1-point perspective, so basically in 1-point perspective, in 1-point perspective, our diagonal vanishing point is northeast. Okay, we're looking north. Okay, 1-point perspective. 1-point perspective. Okay, so that would be our north vanishing point. 1-point perspective, northeast over here would be our diagonal vanishing point. Okay, and incidentally, like the equal distance across, like if we measure this length and go across, in 1-point perspective, that would give us our other diagonal vanishing point. We actually have 2, and this would be northwest. Okay, and sorry, I'm probably just really confusing you guys right now, so I will back up. But the point is, in 2-point perspective, when we're looking, somewhere in between northeast or north and east, northeast basically becomes our diagonal vanishing point. Okay, so there's kind of an inverted relationship there. Anyways, I think I've just confused all of you. So point is, with our ellipse, we're going to trust that we're going to eyeball it and hope that this looks like a square, right? But we're just guessing. We're not being absolutely, precise with it. And we're going to go down from here. Okay, we're just going to again, sketch in that elliptical shape. No footballs, no pointy edges. Make sure we go through each of these. Right? Imagine this is like a tangent point where our arc just kind of kisses it and then kind of comes around. stays fully within the boundaries of that square shape. And try to draw it as curved as you can. Okay. With ellipses, the further away from the horizon line, the more circular they become. The closer and closer and closer they get to the horizon line, the more shallow they become. Okay. So that's how we draw an ellipse. So this is a simple cylinder, right? If I wanted to do a cone, I could keep some of this. I'll just do on a new layer. Just draw on the base. Okay, I already have that top point from when I made the pyramid. And I can basically just go from here to here to get my cone, okay? So starting with a box or a cube, we can make a pyramid shape, right? Could make a pyramid shape. We can make a cylindrical shape, and we can make a cone shape. Okay. All right, so that's kind of how we can start working with very primitive elements to kind of make shapes. Sphere is actually very simple to draw. A sphere is going to look like a perfect circle, no matter what perspective we're looking at it from. So all we have to do to draw a sphere is basically just draw a circle. And I'm not sure how to draw a sphere without filling it. I'm going to go up here to my marquee selection. I'm going to click and hold on it, get my elliptical marquee tool. I'll just draw, hold down shift and draw out a circle like so. Okay. I'm going to go to edit, stroke, and then choose a width for the stroke and just hit OK. And you'll see it will just make a line around my marquee selection stroke. Okay, so that's basically how I do a sphere. Very simple. We'll just use light and shadow to kind of convey the fact that this is form-based, have a shadow shape. Okay. All right. So last but not least, we're going to talk about how to make a character in two-point perspective. And I know, I've thrown a lot at you guys, but please bear with me. I'm going to start with a brand new document here. Okay, so the very first thing that we do is we draw a horizon line. Okay, the next thing we want to do is find two vanishing points. Okay. Next thing I'll do is I'll just draw a composition window, a frame here where my drawing or character is going to reside. Okay. All right. And so now we want to draw our character. And actually, let me just So for our character, we'll start with a vertical line. And that's it. This vertical line is going to tell us where our character's feet are. Okay, where the top of their head is, and that's it. So where are we looking at our character? My character is actually, I'm looking up at their head, right? Their waist is actually up here, their knees are here. So you can do whatever you want, guys. It's totally up to you. You can make your line like so. Right, so you're looking eye level to your character. It's totally up to you. But we're gonna start with a line. Just a vertical line. I'll do something like that. Okay. And our character can be anything, right? Our character can be, we'll start with a silhouette, a graphic shape. Okay, so our character can be like Mr. Peanut or something like that. Feel free to copy this, guys. It's a shape. Kind of like a figure 80 type shape. With another shape coming off the nose. Kind of simple, elongated, teardroppy type feet. Similar shape to the arms with some cauliflower hands at the end. And a couple little eyes. Okay, we want to be able to draw a character, any character. You can use the last character for sure. Yes. Javier. Sorry, Ryan. I apologize. Yes, it's a shape. It's a flat shape. Okay. But we want to think of these shapes as like, how could I add structure to these? So how can I think of this as a three-dimensional form? So let's draw some cross contour lines on these simple shapes. Okay, and these cross contour lines are actually elliptical shapes. All right, just to suggest that this is round. I think we're not going to do the Blender stuff today, guys. I think it's probably a little too much. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what this is. We're going to kind of plot out certain relationships. So the knees, the feet, the hands, the eyes, the shoulders, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to use this line that we've created. We want to draw our character on that line. So we're going to use our two vanishing points. So we'll just go from one vanishing point. We don't have to be like super precise with this because we're doing an organic character. If we're too like perfect with it, it'll actually, in my opinion, it'll lose some of its charm. We want to use, when we're doing characters, we want to use the perspective as more of a guide than anything, versus a be all and end all kind of like absolute mechanical, treatment, because it will very quickly, our character will start to get very robotic. If you're doing a robot character, yeah, that's fine. But if you're just doing like an organic character, you probably want to kind of be a little more fluid. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is we want to break our character down into its simplest shapes and forms. So we can kind of almost think of like two spheres here. Right? Inside like a sock. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to draw a line through the knees, through the feet, through the hands, etc. Each of these will recede back to one of the vanishing points. So that's what I'll do. I'll just basically put in here a line here for the knees, right? The hips here are about just under halfway. Okay, so see this line, how it would go back to the vanishing point, and the line for the knees here would go back to the vanishing point. I'll have a line here for the feet. It'll go back to the vanishing point. We'll do the heels and we'll do the toes. Okay, the feet themselves, each of these feet, right? It's going to go, the heel is going to kind of face this vanishing point. The toe will be here, so this will be heel, this will be toe. And same thing here. Heel, toe. Okay, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to just sketch in. This is where one of my knees is, right on that vanishing line. Another foot, heel, toe, right, based on the vanishing point. The other knee is going to be here on that vanishing line. Okay, so we're looking down at these feet. So we're seeing the tops of the feet there. Okay, so we can kind of almost think of these feet as like little blocks. That run back like that, right? So we can start with a block and maybe round it out after. If that makes sense. All right. And then here is where the body is. So we can treat this again as a couple of spherical shapes. Okay, this is below the horizon line, so we're looking down on it. So we want to turn that spherical shape like this. Right, the head is going to be above the horizon line. It's going to be a little bit bigger than this one. Right, and we'll turn, because it's above, we'll turn that line like so. We can draw through dot dot dot. Dot dot dot, right? And this foot will kind of connect back into the body here. Something like that. Okay, we have this kind of connection in here. Okay, our eyes. We could go from our vanishing line. Our eyes are on this angle, right? So the near eye is a little higher than the far eye. Okay, and then our nose is going to just kind of be in here somewhere. Okay, we can kind of think the front of our nose is here, the back of our nose is here, and that's going to go back to this vanishing point. So that's why it's sticking up like that. Okay, so we actually wouldn't see one of the eyes. You wouldn't see some of this stuff in here. And we would wind up like something like that. Okay, we can draw a few more of these cross contour lines in. As they get closer to the horizon line, remember they get shallower and shallower. We want to make sure we use the vanishing point here and the vanishing line to indicate where those hands are as well. Right, so catch that line. See, one hand will be here and one hand will be here. See how that it just kissed that line. And the shoulders, same thing. Shoulders are above the horizon line, so this shoulder will be slightly higher, and this shoulder will be slightly lower. Okay, so something like that, guys. It doesn't have to be like, you know, exactly like this, but generally speaking, that is the idea. When we're doing a per character in perspective, 2-point perspective in this case. So this is a 3/4 character. Started with basic shapes, right? we suggested a little bit of form to those shapes. Okay, we kind of broke it down to like, in this case, a couple spheres and a kind of a cylindrical form. It could be a more boxy character. You know, this is how a person's torso naturally is, like more of a box shape. Right, so you could kind of start with something like that as well. And think about where those arms connect. Okay, but always find that, like the near and far, how do they align to the vanishing point? If this was a torso, if I had a regular torso, I'd have that one near arm, that far arm, this, like that. Okay, see how the hands, they go down to that same vanishing line, like so. Okay, and then the head would be a box shape like this. Okay, and the feet, again, the heels would line up with that vanishing line, and the toes would line up with that vanishing line. All right, so toe, toe, heel, heel, right? And we can kind of assemble our character like that. Okay, so this is kind of the key thing, just getting those feet right. In perspective, it feels unnatural to, you know, sometimes make this near foot lower than the far foot, and this is all totally dependent on, you know, where that character is relative to the horizon line. Okay, so I could be looking totally up at them, right? Eyes. And the depth of my character goes back to that horizon line. Etc., etc. Okay, so that's it. That's what I want to see from you guys. Our next assignment, we're really going to start digging into characters, but right now we're just getting started. We're doing 2-point perspective, and we are looking at how to kind of put our characters into those spaces as well. Okay, because that's ultimately where we want to land. If we can draw like environments, if we can draw simple geometric shapes in 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective, we can kind of start to make spaces, environments, places for our characters to live. And then if we can kind of figure out how to draw characters in those spaces as well, and characters that are based on simple shapes, we like the silhouettes, then we're setting ourselves up for success, like for good design, right? And also starting to add in some of that extra niceness of the form, right? And making things three-dimensional. All right, so for our weekly activity, it's going to be create a character in 2-point perspective. So doesn't have to be anything crazy, guys, but make your attempt. Okay, so we talked about shapes. We could play with different shapes, but we want to find a way to take those shapes and start thinking about them structurally. How can we add form to those shapes? And my suggestion is break them down to the very simple shapes, like make like rectangular prisms, make cylinders, make spheres, make cones, and then we looked at how to draw some of those things in perspective, and then use your guidelines to help map out the structure there. Okay, so that's what I like to see. That's going to be due on Friday, guys. Okay, do your best, have fun with it. The video lecture is here to kind of go back and review. I hope we didn't kind of cover it too fast. But hopefully it all just makes sense. If there are any questions, please, guys, of course, let me know. And I wasn't going to mention anything, but I think I will. I did notice that there are a few like dislikes on my videos, and I don't really mind that, but I would like to know why, right? I would like to know why from those who are doing it, so that I can fix whatever the problem is. I just can only guess, right? So if you dislike it, that's totally fine. I don't mind. But if you could also just let me know, or find some way to let me know what's not working for you, or whatever that is, I'd be happy to kind of try to figure out a solution, a workaround, because I do want this to work for everybody. So yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to jump over to the Google Meet and kind of go from there. But hopefully this has been helpful. I know it's a lot of information, but yeah, I think you guys can do it. Definitely when you're sitting down to do your characters, go back, watch the last 15-20 minutes of this video, and I think it'll be very informative. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Let's turn my camera on. All right, so I'll jump over to Google Meet for a bit to see if there's any questions, and then other than that, you guys are free to go. Thanks, everybody. Take care.